aims? I have no aims.
I mean, you're writing.
I've stopped writing.
I don't understand.
Let me put it another way. I no longer write.
Why not?
Because I have nothing more to say. If I ever had anything to say in the first place.
Oh, nonsense.
I used to think that what I did would make a difference, you know? Change the world. Thought nothing would ever be the same again. It's no good. The world is too old and there's nothing new. It's all been said.
Not in the way you can see it. You have a gift. It's no good throwing it away because your expectations were unrealistic. It's the expectations you should change.
It's my gift. I can do what I like with it.
But you can't give up. You've hardly begun.
Don't worry, I'll be very good at it. No one will be able to touch me.
Welcome everybody, my name is Kees, and in the previous Zeit-Talks episode we talked about how difficult cultural change can be. And in this episode I would like to talk about the changes that you can already apply. So the Zeitgeist Movement Netherlands compiled a list of things that you can already do on a local level. So it's mostly focused on the Netherlands with websites talking about Dutch companies and Dutch initiatives. But this can be a homework exercise for other chapters to apply the same thing for their chapter and local area, because then we can facilitate people in making more conscious decisions. Because the opposite would be to help the big oil industry or any other industries to become too big to be replaced. And if we want to transition to a more fair and open economy, we already need to make those changes now. But first, what is a chapter? So the Zeitgeist movement functions through a network of chapters, which in turn may consist of teams. A chapter can be grouped at a local, regional, national or international level. Nationally can be, for example, Chapter Netherlands. Regionally could be on a provincial or state level, such as Chapter Southeast Michigan. And local could be on a city level, such as Chapter New York, or for example, a university campus. These chapters operate in a grassroots culture. This means that one functions independently with the same collective zeitgeist train of thought. There is no central control. Each chapter is working to spread and improve this zeitgeist train of thought. This translates, for example, into raising awareness about our core social and economic problems, but also to investigate the practical solutions that we have at our disposal and to make them better known so that we can subsequently outgrow the current outdated socio-economic system. And this is where we will focus on now. So there are a number of chapters in the world. If you go to tcm.one/map, you have an interactive map where you can zoom into, and if your chapter doesn't exist already, you can leave a comment here and we'll add you to the map. Anyway, short disclaimer about this list that we'll go through. Being more sustainable costs more money. So don't make your life harder than it may already be. So consult with a professional if you really want to apply this change to see which affordable alternatives apply for your personal situation. The list is ordered from doing things once and then benefit daily to doing things on a daily basis. So it's more like a lifestyle change. So the first one is switching to banks, health insurances, pension funds, mortgages, and insurance companies that do invest in renewable energy, but not in the arms industry. So there's this nice website that discusses certain themes that banks use for maximizing their profits. So if you put your money in their bank, they use that money to, for example, invest in oil and gas. So if you don't want that, you can consult this overview and see which banks don't do that and where they do invest their money on. There's also a nice list about sustainable energy providers, which also highlights which ones are doing very well, and also explains to you why they're doing very well. So they discuss how they generate the energy, where they get the energy from, because some energy providers, they invest their profits into, for example, Finland, and they build a dam there to generate electricity and then generate the sustainable energy there, but you don't use it. That's could be labeled as greenwashing, which is something the European Union is also making stricter laws against. Also consider making your home more sustainable in the sense of insulation, solar panels, LED lighting, economical attachments, for example, for your tap or shower, so you can take shorter showers. You can still use the same amount of shower time, but use less water. But let's zoom into the more broader solutions, such as applying solar panels. So this website gives you the know-how about what the costs are, but also the return of investment, but also the impact it has for the environment. And not just solar panels, also solar boilers, also insulating your the walls, your floors, your roof, but also improving your windows, or investing into a heat pump. And maybe your house is too old, so it costs too much to really make your house more sustainable. Then also consider moving to a newly built house, where in the Netherlands we already apply these things for newly built houses, so it is cheaper in that sense. However, at the moment we have a housing crisis, so houses are not very affordable either at the moment. So this suggestion didn't age very well, but yeah. Also consider moving, so you can get easier on a train or a bike. So if you have a train station nearby, it will be easier to ditch your car. But if you really need a car, then evaluate if that car can be made more sustainable, or buy a newly built car that's built with more sustainable designs. However, the car that you already have is of course the most sustainable one, because building a completely new car is also bad for the environment. Or consider moving closer to your work or where you need to be, so you can have shorter car rides. Also consider carpooling. So this is a nice interactive map which shows all the carpooling squares in the Netherlands. So there's dedicated large places where you can park and then share your car with others. Of course, you can set up a carpooling meeting anywhere, but these are dedicated places for that. Or use services in the Netherlands or in big cities that allow you to get a car through an app on your phone, and you just book a car, bike, scooter or whatever, and you just use it for the duration that you really need it. You don't have the maintenance costs, you don't have the parking costs, which is already a huge benefit in a city like Amsterdam. So it's a big win, but also because cars most of the time are just sitting there doing nothing. If you have shared cars, then the rotation is a lot faster. So it's not sitting there all day doing nothing. At the end of the day, you just pick it up, but it's constantly used by another person, which is also reducing the amount of cars in cities and making the quality of life better. Also consider to fly less, because you can apply all these things and you save a lot of CO2, but then let's say you go from Amsterdam to Barcelona and then you calculate that, then the CO2 that you will generate by taking that flight is 0.5 tons of CO2. But in order to stop climate change, the maximum amount of CO2 is 0.6 tons if you want to reduce climate change. And that's per year, per person. So if you just take this flight from Amsterdam to Barcelona, you already generated 0.5 tons of CO2, while we have to reduce to 0.6 tons. And the average annual amount of CO2 generated by a single person in the EU is 8.4 tons of CO2. So if we can cut flights, then maybe we can already make some easy gains there. Also consider working more from home, and that of course applies if your house is very sustainable, so properly insulated, sustainable practices such as solar panels. Because if you have all old houses in the company where you work and everyone's working from home, they all have to heat their own homes with significantly more energy than they would have if they would all come together in this single place, which is the office. So these are things to consider. Also consider eating less meat. I think it's generally known that eating less meat is good for your health, but also good for the environment. So this table shows that 100 grams of beef creates a lot of greenhouse gases. But if you would switch to, for example, a diet with more beans, meat alternatives, such as based on soya products, or nuts and seeds, then you reduce your CO2 emissions quite a lot, and you still have a protein-rich diet. But again, consult a professional for changing your diet. Also check locally produced foods, because cutting logistics distances is very beneficial because it's more efficient. And I see that I forgot one, so consider flying less, but what's the alternatives? Well, trains, for example. So this map shows an interactive way to point anywhere on the map, and then you can see how far a train will take you in 5 hours. So if you can see, if you point at Amsterdam, you can get to London, Paris, Frankfurt, and it's not very impressive for 5 hours since the Netherlands is not that big. But the same goes for any other country. And as you can see, you can start seeing a pattern here. It's mostly based on national borders. And it's not like that we're very afraid of traveling to another country. It's because the railway infrastructure is not standardized. So they have different widths for the rail tracks, and the power lines also have different voltages, which makes it harder to take a train to another country here in Europe. They're working on improving this, so in the future this map may look very different. Also consider buying more sustainable products, such as, for example, a Fairphone is built modularly, so you can just replace the camera if it's broken, you can replace the screen if it's broken, the battery. It's also built with recyclable materials, and the material is also recycled itself. And it uses fair trade materials. I will go into more details about Fairphone and why it's good, but also why it's bad. Not necessarily bad, but in this economic system. Also, prefer buying recyclable and locally and ethically produced products. So this is another website here where you can check all kinds of categories, such as energy, fashion, food and drinks, technology, such as printers, PCs, laptops, but also mobile phones. So if you zoom in on Fairphone, which is the number 1 here in the rating, you can also see where they base these ratings on. So, furthermore, consider a career or study that facilitates the path towards a natural law resource-based economy. I'll talk more about a natural law resource-based economy in a future episode, but in a nutshell, it's a steady state economy instead of a economy based on infinite growth on a planet that doesn't have infinite resources. Also consider following more scientific news, for example, through verified social media sources, which is the least you can do. And the reason that this is important is because the more you will talk about change, the more resistance you will get. And sometimes these are knee-jerk reactions. For example, if you talk about wind energy, so these huge windmills, some people will say, but they kill a lot of birds, or they're bad for the environment. They're not good for the environment. Well, the facts are actually that cars and windows and cats kill a lot more birds than windmills. But this is just a generic example. But if we become more aware about the problems and the solutions from trusted sources, then we can have a better conversation. Also consider keeping the internet open, safe, and free, which is very important because the internet allows us to collaborate internationally. So if we keep respecting free speech and privacy and using open standards and open source software, we can maintain a healthy ecosystem in the digital world. So you can, for example, switch to an internet provider that respects these ideals, or help organizations, such as in the Netherlands, we have Bits of Freedom, which is like a privacy watchdog. And talking about open source software, the reason this is so important is because we've built these walled gardens. So in the past, we had email and the World Wide Web, which were all built on open standards and open source software. And they allowed you to email to anyone in the world, as long as they respected those open standards. And we still have that today. But we also now have things like messengers. How many messengers do you have on your phone to communicate with the people that you need to communicate to? I, for example, strictly only use Signal and Element. So those are open source messengers, but Signal doesn't allow me to talk to someone on WhatsApp. And Element is also using a network called Matrix, which is a federated network where you can host your own part of the network, but also join with other networks. So you have a decentralized network. There's no monopolized control of the whole system, which is how the internet was designed to be. And it's also helping collaboration and reduces the risk of corruption. But there are many alternatives here that you can use, such as Google alternatives, Facebook alternatives, Amazon, Microsoft, and Adobe alternatives. And they all go about the same principle, to keep the internet open and free by using open standards and open source software. And open source is very important because it allows us to contribute together and collaborate together to create the best possible solutions, rather than creating these walled gardens, which obviously are not ideal because, how many messengers do you have on your phone? And that's just one example. Then we have the last one, which is get involved in the Zeitgeist movement. So we have a dedicated page here that talks about what it means to become a member of the Zeitgeist movement, but also how to become a member. So we have 3 simple steps. Get acquainted with the Zeitgeist train of thought by reading our general description, and then fill out a Z quiz, which is a short quiz. It's not an exam, which goes about the general important understandings of the Zeitgeist movement. And if you provide wrong answers there, which are mostly the misconceptions of the Zeitgeist movement, you also get automatically some information about the right answer and why it is the correct answer. So it's also scalable. If we now suddenly have a huge momentum of people that go through this list, fill out this quiz. We don't have to grade all these quizzes and give individual responses. It's very scalable because it's all automated. Also, the suggestion to follow our social media so you can keep in contact with the people, but also contact us directly through the website, because maybe someone lives in the same city as you, so you can meet face to face. And then adding our public calendar to your calendar so that you automatically get notifications of upcoming meetings, so you can meet face to face or online, which is very important to keep the interaction going on this local level. Anyway, that was it for this episode. I hope you found it useful. If you need any help with these suggestions, or to apply this thing to your own local Zeitgeist chapter, then please go to tcm.one to join the discussion, or go to zeitgeistbeweging.nl if you're Dutch. And we talked about open source software. These are the open source software solutions I use to create Zeit-Talks, but also the open source forum tcm.one, and also the zeitgeistbeweging.nl. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.